Okay, good evening, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, officers, anybody online. The time is 6 o'clock and we are live from, not Wembley, Bexhill Town Hall. So welcome to this evening's meeting. My name is Paul Osborne, I'm the chairman of this committee. First item on the agenda, minutes. Do I have your authorisation to sign the minutes of this meeting, this committee held on the 17th of March and the 19th of May as a correct record of those proceedings?
So move.
Good. All happy? Yeah, thank you very much. Item 2, apologies and substitutions. Any apologies or substitutions?
No apologies, Chair.
Okay, we're missing Councillor Creaser from Rye. Maybe she's jammed up in traffic, or maybe she thinks it's going to be 6:30. It is bizarre. Additional agenda items? There are none.
Yeah, there are none, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosure of interest and dispensations from Councillor Thomas.
Chair, the housing company, non-pecuniary interest. Thank you.
Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, for item 5, I am a board member of Bexhill Community Land Trust.
Okay. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. This might or might not be relevant on the Airbnb strategy, but a member of Bexhill Town Council discussing tourism.
I have resigned as a director of the housing company, but I might still be on the books.
No, it's been taken up, but not one.
Okay, I think that covers that. Right, okay, final report of the Housing Development Strategy Task and Finish Group. You remember this came to us a couple of meetings ago, just to sort of look through it and then send it off to public consultation where it has been, and it has now returned for us to basically say everything's brilliant, everything's tickety-boo, which probably is, and then it can be referred to Cabinet and then onwards to full council for adoption. So, Graham, I think you want to take this one, or Joe want to kick off? I think Graham, yeah, we go with Graham.
Thank you, Chair. So just to, remind members that the Housing Development Strategy Task and Finish Group was formed following a meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in September 2023. Following that, we had a housing development event in January 2024 at the Manor Barn, Bexhill. I think many of you were there. We had a really useful day hearing from many stakeholders involved in development in Rother, and that really was the launching point for the strategy, and allowed us to go forward in a collaborative manner, engaging with those stakeholders and hearing from a wide range of people, many experts indeed. So following that, we formed our Task and Finish group and went forward identifying those key challenges and looking at the opportunities. A really useful set of discussions were had in that, researching the key challenges and getting as clear direction from our stakeholders as we could at that time. And looking at the report in front of you, if you look at paragraph 11, that highlights some of those key discussion points from the second of those sessions, and you can directly read across some of those points into the action plan of the strategy. So 11C would line up against theme 1, objectives 2 and 6. Similarly, if we come down to paragraph 13, then points C and D read across into the action plan of the strategy. namely Theme 2, Objective 5, and Theme 3, Objective 2. So you can see that clear progression of the research that's come through into the strategy. As the chair noted, we've then had a public consultation exercise and made some specific amendments to the strategy off the back of that consultation exercise. Some of our wording has been changed, such as we initially had to support and facilitate the creation of neighbourhood plans, has become to actively encourage and facilitate the creation of those neighbourhood plans. So our wording's got stronger on that point. And under Theme 2, Objective 2, we've added a new action in there around encouraging registered providers to have more equitable and transparent staircasing positions for shared ownership homes. Again, something that came out of that consultation process and further discussions with stakeholders. It's been a very thorough process going through with the Task and Finish group. We're very thankful to the consultants that have supported us along the way from Altair, and believe we now have a strong strategy to commend to Cabinet for approval. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. I've asked two Cabinet members here tonight, so I'll go to them now. Councillor McCourt, anything you wish to add?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, thank you very much. I'd like to commend the Task and Finish group, which was chaired by Councillor Barnes, for the really good job that they did. It was a cross-party effort, and there was consensus reached on no party effort, because obviously Councillor Winter, being an independent, was on there as well. I think, I agree with the main themes that are outlined in this strategy. It's clear about the challenges as well. I mean, I think if you can sum it up in one word, it's delivery. It's really about enabling us as a council to deliver with partners and also ourselves more housing stock so that we can end the misery of having several thousand people on a waiting list for years and years. But there are challenges. I mean, we are surrounded by an area of outstanding natural beauty. 83% of Rother is the high weald. We have low wage, low skilled workforce. And there's one stat that jumps out of the pages of the strategy for me, that 44% of new households in Rother earn less than the threshold to afford the lowest quartile rents. So rents have really skyrocketed as well. So the themes are good. I think bringing the sites forward is great. So and I commend Graham and the team of officers as well, and working with Altair and the group. I think shared ownership, staircasing, as you've mentioned, is also another option which will make homes available to people. Building our own development capacity is something that interests me, and issues such as the town hall estate, bringing that forward. On page 9, I'm really pleased to see Theme 3 in there, which is finding more ways to deliver new council-owned affordable and social housing, and to move towards, as outlined on page 55, a housing revenue account. What kind of highlighted for me is, just as an aside, on Saturday I was in Tilling Green and Rye at an antisocial behaviour meeting, and Southern Homes turned up, but regrettably they sent two very junior officers who really got it in the neck from the residents there in the Residents Association. And I felt sorry for them. And I think that it's not acceptable for Southern Housing to send junior officers along. It's not showing any respect to the residents there. So for me, if we can re-establish that democratic control and accountability of local residents over their housing and start building our own homes and with a housing revenue account eventually, it will be the solution to this. But it won't be a magic wand solution. It will take some time. But this housing strategy is a good strategy, and I commend all those who are involved in it, and I thank them for their efforts with it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Colleen, you're online. Anything you wish to add as a Cabinet member?
No, thank you. I just would like to reiterate and just actually agree with everything that's just been said. Unfortunately, I shouldn't come in because the sound quality is extraordinarily difficult from a distance. It's broken up all of the time, so I could only hear part of what was being said, but I got the gist of what was just being said. Obviously, from my perspective, yes, we will do all we can. We are going out to parish councils and town councils with the local plan again to see if we can find places where homes and development can happen. So, we know we've got a big demand on the number of houses that we need to find. And certainly, yes, we will be going back out to talk to them between now and Christmas, certainly. I think the whole difficulty with registered providers is one that we all know about. So, no point in me reiterating that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I shall now go to Councillor Barnes, who is the chairman of the group. Councillor John Barnes.
Yes, a few words of thanks to begin with, particularly to Graham, to our consultants at Altair, and to Joe and his team, who were very active participants in this. A good group. I'm sorry we lost Chaz towards the end. We also had one of our members in a hospital for a while, but it was a good team. And we had some very, very thorough evidence gathering sessions, which helped us enormously. And it was good to find the public were on side for most of, in fact, I think all of what we proposed. The numbers were always positive, even if they dropped away from the high point of 90% down to about 60. I think we probably ought to recognise just how far we came under the previous strategy in terms of dealing with the homelessness problem, which led us to become a registered provider and for Joe's team to develop considerable capacity as we go forward to slightly shift our role. So the page in this theme on opportunities is worth just having a look, because most of those are about capacity within this organisation. I think it's important to realise there are 3 themes with the objectives grouped under those. Much of what we envisage for this council is in the 3rd theme. And what we're looking to do, I've been very struck, and I think the whole of my team was struck, by the way that we've developed a development industry which is separate really from the building industry. And we don't see why we shouldn't become a more active developer ourselves. So alongside the role as registered provider, I think we're looking first and foremost to create a development-friendly climate in ROBA. That's the first theme. And I think we've achieved that. What we've now got to build on our success so far to make sure that goes forward. And clearly the planners have a major role to play in that. Our second theme is about supporting communities. We've got some promising developments there. Icklesham is an obvious example. But really, I think our parish councils in future are going to have to do more because as we move towards a unitary authority, I think more and more focus will have to be put on the bottom tier of local government. But I would hope that the unitary will take forward some of what we're dealing with in the 3rd theme, which is really about the council's role and becoming an active developer, a provider also, I think, of social housing. Much in the end is going to depend on whether the government can come up with finance, both on the demand side, because quite clearly deposits are a major problem with those purchasing houses. Level of rents are pretty high at the moment and way beyond the scope of many of our young people to actually pay. Hence the importance, I think, of a revived social housing programme by this authority. But at the end of the day, there is much we can do, and I hope very much the Cabinet will pick this up, run with it. But in the end, much is going to depend on how much support the government is able to give to affordable housing. I think that's all I have to say.
Okey-dokey, thank you. Now, I've got a number of hands up, so I think I saw the first one was Councillor Burton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, clearly the drive of this document is strategy and provision of housing, but I wanted to just refer to the impacts questionnaire on page 19 and 20, which predominantly has positive impacts on the carbon assessment, but there are two sections, mobility and connectivity, carbon, nature and environment, which are a mixture of positive and negative. And my fellow Councillor McCourt mentioned about implementation, and those picking up those points and doing really well on those points that have already been highlighted that are potential not ideal or positive and negative impacts is something that we can actually incorporate and make really good homes for people. That's my comment, really.
Okay. Councillor Clark, you had your hand up, I'm sure you did. You did.
Yeah. Yes, it's an excellent report, which I know it would be. The first part of the report pretty much tells us things that we already know, but I think the crucial part of this is the end, where it says purpose and vision. And I always like to try and keep things fairly simple, and quite honestly, it's clear that we must spend all money at our disposal in the next 2 years, must be spent on housing need and spending money on enhancing facilities in our communities, rural and urban. Affordable homes are a real priority, whether shared ownership scheme or social renting. This is quite slow at the moment. It needs to be developed throughout the district and not all focused on one major scheme. It's disappointing sometimes that some housing schemes take 2 years from planning to actual completion of the site, whether it's small or large. But I'm very encouraged by various means, the amount of support we're giving to community centres, village halls and schemes in rural and urban parts of the district, which is, really very grateful for that. Not easy, but I always hark back to, it's nearly 4 years ago now, maybe 5. I tried to get a housing scheme up running at Bexhill Cemetery, got an access road in, but unfortunately the scheme has not progressed. So it ain't easy. It's very difficult, some of these schemes to deliver. Thank you.
Now we've got Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. Really, this is a comment on the housing strategy document, which I think is a wonderful document. But you can, if you were cynical, you could say it really says we are where we are. And as Councillor Barnes said, it points up to the fact that there's lots of things we can't really impact unless the government do something about the way they fund housing, unless they do something about the way in which shared ownership and the various ownership schemes, and unless they do something about the way they're constructed. However, this document gives us an instant look up, if you like. As soon as the government change anything, with this document we can see its impact. We can see how it's going to change. That puts us in a position to reply to government as whether we think they've done the right thing or the wrong thing. But as I say, it's very easy to read this and saying, yeah, well, we know all that, but all in one place, and therefore the impact assessment of any government move in the housing area, we can assess and either rejig our own strategy or lobby government for something that we feel is will more affect the situation as we see it. So great document, thank you, and very, very good work for the scrutiny it was given by the Task and Finish group. That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Legg, did you indicate earlier or did you not? No indication. That's all right. Can I go to Councillor Barnes then? You as the chair of the group, would you like to move the recommendations as printed, the contents of the report together with the appendices?
Very happy to move that we recommend this, and I think I caught the green tinge of comments from Councillor Burton. I've no doubt that will be reported forward to the Cabinet together with our recommendation. So I so move.
Thank you. And a seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Joe, anything you wish to add? This is yours, this sort of department.
No, other than to thank the Task and Finish Group and Graham and the team. I think it's one of those where, reminded to Councillor Burns' comments at the end there, that we are limited in the levers that we can pull. But what all the time that the main and overriding policy in this country is to have a market-led housing industry, and the best we can do is work with that and advertise ourselves, promote ourselves as being as welcome and harmonious a place for developing housing as we possibly can, given all of those constraints we can do absolutely nothing about to do with our national landscape and all the rest of it. But there's an awful lot we can do in that narrow space, and sometimes having a restricted space in which to operate can counterintuitively make things easier. It's clearer what we need to do, and we need to promote the area. We need to make sure that we look open for business and that the shop window of Rother is there for the market across the RP sector, the national industry developers and builders, house builders, as well as the small and medium enterprise. And trying to hit each market segment in that way is the best we can do. And there will be resource proposals following the strategy in due course, which looks to expand, augment, and accelerate some of that activity. So thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Vote on that. Can I also comment that a number of things are already going ahead? I know, for example, our suggestion that car parks are looked at is being looked at by Journey's department. So there is, we haven't sat on our oars while this is going on. A lot of work is going on at the moment. I really would congratulate Joe's department on that. With that, so moved.
Thank you. I think it's worth saying before I go to the vote that this document, I know the sort of the life, if you like, of this council could be finite, but this document will be used going forward by any new authority. The new authority might turn up in 2 or 3 years' time. They're not going to have all this stuff up and running ready. They're going to have to use what is available to them, probably for 5, if not 10 years before they find their feet, to be honest. So this could be, vitally important to this area going forward for a number of years. I just pass on my personal thanks to John and the members of the Task and Finish Group, particularly Chaz, who had to resign and that. So if he's out, Chaz Pierce, if he's out there listening, then thanks very much, Chaz, and thanks to Graham and the team for the work you put in. So with that, all those in favour of the recommendation? That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, moving forward, recommendations of the Task and Finish, Airbnb Task and Finish Group, item 6, pages 57, so a bit of a scroll. Almost. There we go. Right, recommendations of the Airbnb Task and Finish Group, which ultimately we probably shouldn't have called an Airbnb Task and Finish Group. We should probably have called it a house, second home and holiday lets Airbnb. Nearly said it again, Task and Finish Group, but there it is, that's where we are. Summarise the work of the Task and Finish Group and outline the group's final recommendations to this committee. The report is from Una. So, Una, do you want to kick off?
Thanks very much, Chair. So the Task and Finish Group met 4 times, and we heard evidence from a range of stakeholders, the Rye Town Council. We had one Airbnb owner, Rye Chamber of Commerce. We had the Director of Public Policy from Airbnb, Camber Parish Council, Icklesham Parish Council, as well as Rother Council officers from Planning, Council Tax and Revenue and Environmental Health. We found lots of research out there, but locally the important research to us is from East Sussex County Council and actually some very informative research from Airbnb. We spoke with other local authorities about their experiences of dealing with this issue, and of course we consulted our local residents in Rye, Camber and Winchelsea, and we were really thrilled to receive 444 replies. We got very full replies. This is an issue that people feel strongly about locally. So Rother ranks at number 19, highest in terms of holiday home concentration in England. with 13.1% holiday homes to 1,000 dwellings. So to kind of just put that in context, the highest is South Hams in Devon, and they've got 44.1 holiday homes per 1,000 dwellings. So our council tax records give us a really accurate picture of how many second homes we have. We have 54 in Camber, 139 in Rye and Rye Foran, 122 in the parish of Icklesham. So that gives us a total of 315 second homes in Rye, Camber and Winchelsea. We had to look at all the online platforms, and I've come up with figures, and I would stress to you, of course, they're estimates, because looking at online platforms proved to be quite difficult. Lots of people put their own entry on a few different platforms. Some people put them on for a little bit, they take them off. But my estimates are this. We're going with 119 in Camber, 116 in Rye and Rye Foran, and 16 in Icklesham. That's a total of 251. Now, at the moment, the current controls for second homes and short-term holiday lets are limited. So the use of a dwelling house as a short-term holiday let or a second home doesn't usually require planning permission. If a property is available to let commercially for short-term use for 140 nights or more a year, or is actually let for 70 nights a year, it must be registered to pay business rates. We have 162 properties in Camber, Rye and Winchelsea who are registered to pay business rates. Now, from the 1st of April this year, a council tax premium of 100% was applied to all second homes. There are a few exceptions to this where warehouses on the market. Now, Rother has operated a voluntary scheme for short-term holiday lets since 2019, and we have 8 properties in that registration scheme. The views of many of the stakeholders that we spoke with are that short-term holiday lets should be registered, and they should apply and with appropriate legislation, for example, health and safety and waste and so on. Now, during the course of this group, the Department of Culture, Media and Sports confirmed that they do intend to introduce a nationwide registration scheme for holiday lets, which they're going to host digitally. They're going to connect it across all the platforms so they can then directly link to each property that is advertising as a short-term let in this district. Now, when I heard this, I contacted the DCMS and I suggested that Rother be part of any initial trial, and I'm waiting to hear back from them. So when we have access to this data, we can then look at who is there. We can look to regularising their actual position with regard to registration. But we could also then look at the possibility of a tourist levy. Stakeholders felt overall there was a perception that non-registered short-term holiday lets were getting away with it, as in not paying their due taxes, not complying with health and safety and waste. And equally, they felt that people that had registered were being unfairly penalised. The public survey overwhelmingly felt that second homes and short-term holiday lets contribute positively to the local economy. But they also felt that holiday homes and holiday lets contributed to the lack of affordable housing, social housing and affordable rents. Now, we spent some time discussing this and reviewing it and looking at the research, and we were in agreement that these two issues had really been conflated. The areas of Rye, Camber and Winchelsea are desirable areas where house prices are in line with the national trends, land is at a premium, communities are small, and there isn't a lot of house building. Short-term holiday lets may be individual rooms within home, and sometimes there are whole properties available to let, but only for parts of the year. Or indeed, properties may be historic, which are not really suitable for family accommodation. There isn't a clear relationship between the presence of short-term holiday lets and second homes and the lack of affordable housing. Ring-fencing the council tax premium from second homes so it is spent in the local area would be a good idea, It would provide a reason for the payment, and it would connect and involve the local community. I recommend that feedback be requested on the effect of the council tax premium in early 2026. This would be an opportunity to assess if ring fencing would be feasible. A tourism study is to be carried out later this year to assess the local provision of tourist accommodation, and the results of that could determine changes in the local plan, including restricting the use of all new dwellings in the countryside, other than replacement ones, to that of a primary residence. In other words, preventing their future use as a short-term holiday let or a second home. I recommend that the findings of this study are considered. Finally, I would like to recommend that we work with the local hospitality industry to research ways of encouraging tourists to stay longer than 1 or 2 nights. And we should also create a web page to give a source of information for short-term holiday let owners and a means of reporting concerns for local residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Una. That was very comprehensive. It was really surprising. I was on the Task and Finish group together with Councillor McGurk and Councillor Hackett. It was surprising the amount of feedback we got, wasn't it? 450. You sort of, a couple of hundred would have been good, so 450 was really good. And as you said, we were working on fact. So we had facts to work to and not sort of hearsay or guesses from people who assume, that every second house is a holiday let or it's always difficult to sort of get it. I like the idea that the last point you said was a specific page for owners to sort of register or get the information from. That was the thing that our man James from Rye mentioned, wasn't it? That when he set up his business 4 or 5 years ago, maybe more than that, maybe. I think it was 19. I think it was about 2019. He set up originally. He said it took him a lot of time and effort to sort of find, the rules and regulations, what you got to do, what you can't do, what you need to do, who you need to tell, where you get the bins emptied, you need a specialist contractor and all the rest of it. So sort of if we can set something up like that, sort of a one-stop shop almost that sort of assists people and make sure they're on the right track, then that's got to be good, hasn't it, to be honest. There's a number of recommendations here. I shall now go to Councillor McGurk, who chaired the group. So
Chairman, can I just quickly declare an interest?
Yeah, go on.
As Una mentioned East Sussex County Council, I would declare an interest as an East Sussex County Councillor, bearing in mind that East Sussex County Council has been specifically mentioned in the narrative that Una gave. Thank you. Personal, not prejudicial.
Okay, that'll be the same with Charlie, I bet, assuming. Yep. Okay. Simon, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Una, not just for the report, but for the creative way and the very engaged and diligent way you managed the agenda and the participants. It was a really fascinating process to be part of the Task and Finish group, small Task and Finish group, which I think added possibly to its effectiveness. Really fascinating process. And like you were saying, Chair, and Una pointed out, it was what was an initial assumption that I had, that second homes and Airbnbs may have contributed to a rise in housing cost of houses, and putting pressure on the rental market, became clear that it wasn't that simple, and that the market actually is quite complex, even in Rye, and especially between Camber, Rye and Winchelsea. The issues are all quite different. Winchelsea has a lot of second home owners who are very much regarded as part of the community. they tend to spend a lot more time there than second homeowners in other parts of Rother. Rye, again, a lot of very engaged second homeowners, but one of the streets which was mentioned in particular, I think, during some of the sessions is Mermaid Street, which is where the Mermaid Inn is, and it's very picturesque, and all the rest of it. And we're not sure if there are 2 or 3, or possibly even 1 permanent. Well, I know there are at least 2 permanent residents on Mermaid Street. But even if those homes were to become available, we can't pretend that the workers who need affordable accommodation in Rye and the surrounding area are overnight going to move into, homes that cost at least £1.5 million, and that often require a lot of maintenance and upkeep. So what second homes may contribute to is more of a sense of place and a community with fewer dark windows at night and more people actually taking part in the life of the town. And that was the sense that a lot of people fed back. But for me, so it's really interesting that we've had the housing strategy and the same overview and scrutiny committee, because actually for me, that task and finish group really highlighted the need for affordable social housing in our communities. Rye, as we've said before, I think someone was mentioning before, we haven't had any houses built, only homes built in Rye for quite some time. We've got some interesting planning applications in, doing the sort of planning hokey-cokey with a few developments at the moment. We're on, we're off, and there are lots of dependencies with highways and environment and all the rest of it. But the issue is really, really stark that for the people who need housing in Rye, people who are servicing our hospitality industries, retail, we need to have decent quality of affordable accommodation. And that's why this council must continue to really hold developers to, as closely as we possibly can, to the levy or the percentage of social housing, that each development, that is our ambition for each new development. So that's a real priority for me that came out of this this task and finish group. And the other priorities, I would really like to see us explore the tourist levy. When we can get a decent register, and the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, really interesting what they're doing, and hopefully we do need to position ourselves so we can take advantage of what any emerging policy, legislation offers us to have a realistic oversight and knowledge of what's going on in our towns and villages. And then to be able to, if we can explore the use of a tourist levy, it won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I think if that were to be used in the communities where it is raised, it doesn't have to be a huge amount, but if it were to be able to be used in the communities where it is raised, that would make such a difference to maintaining the appearance and infrastructure of our communities, which is so important, which attracts people in the first place. So that balance between tourism and our communities being real places where real people live and have real jobs. We have a tourist industry, thank goodness, but we also have, industries and lots of jobs that people have been part of and have been proud to be working in for a long time. So balancing the needs of tourism and local business and industry is really what this is all about for me. And thanks again for everyone who took part in the Task and Finish group. It was a really comradely, convivial atmosphere, very productive, very focused, and really supported by great officers, rather. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you ever so much, Una. That was a really, really good summary of all that you've done, and it sounds as if it's been an amazing Task and Finish group. I'm just thinking now, are you likely to extend it? There must be lots of second homes here in Bexhill. There's certainly a lot of second homes in Battle. And even I would move to probably in Burwash as well. And I just wondered if that was going to expand to incorporate those places too.
Might be down to you, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's really important to wait until I get access to that DCMS database. And I think once I have that, you see, then I will actually have the definitive Excel spreadsheet with the details on it. And then we will know exactly what we have. And then I think I can actually then start to look at the different ideas we've discussed to see what would be feasible. And I think, of course, getting the feedback from the Second Home Council Premium is going to be really important. Because, of course, the Second Home Council Premium, of course, is designed to free up housing. But we have to wait to see whether or not that is actually what happens. So I think I will be very open to all of that, Councillor. But I think I need to take it step by step, and let's see. I am rather hopeful, you know, by Christmas I would have a very good idea. I should have access to the system by then. And then, of course, then to tie in then with the feedback from Council Tax Premium, you know, so I'm thinking about maybe, you know, early spring, I'd have something maybe I could present again to you.
That would be wonderful. I mean, at Battle, we're trying to form a marketing and tourism strategy for our town, which, if it's successful, we would share with other towns. And, you know, sort of the number of accommodation available is often quite an issue. There was a really interesting item in the local government daily news that came out yesterday, saying that research by the property firm Colliers has found that a tax loophole allowing second home owners to avoid both council tax and business rates by letting their property for just 70 years will cost councils a total of 334 million. Have you any comment on that?
No, Councillor.
I asked Councillor Bayliss as the business cabinet portfolio holder here, so she's here. So, Councillor Bayliss, if you want to inform us of any of your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. A really, really interesting study, and I managed to attend, I think, 2 of the sessions to listen to the evidence that was put forward. I like Councillor Cook, I mean, I can see similarities straight away across to Bexhill. Interestingly, when you talk to Airbnb or holiday let owners in Bexhill, the drop-off in weekly holidays is really marked. So there are a few people who will only let their properties for a week at a time in the summer. They don't want to let for 2 or 3 days. And they're really finding it very difficult these days. I mean, if you remember back to COVID times in 2000, 2001, I mean, people were sort of frantically, buying up and sort of doing these holiday lets because, that was people's main option was to holiday in the UK, and people didn't really want to go in a B&B or a hotel and spread the lurgy. So unfortunately it built right up, and I think now that people are going back to their normal patterns of holiday making, we're finding that people are really struggling. I struggle a little bit with some of the recommendations. I mean, I've 1 or 2 examples where I've had Airbnb owners who try to convert back to residential and are really facing a big problem in terms of getting around our planning policy. The last one I dealt with actually went to inspector went on appeal, and the planning inspector upheld it, even though he's unable to let it as a holiday let. They would not allow it to revert back as a residential property. And actually, if you think, that's one of the reasons why this particular group was set up. So there's something a little bit perverse there, and I've definitely got it in mind input into the local plan about the sort of evidence that you need in order to sort of swap back from holiday accommodation to residential and vice versa. I think it would be safe to say that there are a number of properties which are let more than 70 days, but are council tax rated, and people are not, and I think we had a discussion earlier today where we were trying to decide actually whether that, which was more financially rewarding for Rother, to actually have a property council tax or actually business rated. It's a toss up actually, one or the other. I think it's really good news about the government's registration scheme. So we've had our own voluntary scheme in place since 2019, and we've only got 8 properties registered. So having something which is a statutory scheme where we can actually enforce some of the regulations will be really, really good news. And the other thing I'd wanted to highlight was about the high level of support. I mean, that is really, excellent feedback for 440, I think, people who responded. So yes, from a sort of economic development regeneration perspective, we do need the right amount of Airbnb, possibly from my own experience, and obviously I'm closer to Bexhill than I am to Rye, but my own experience is probably we're oversupplied at the moment with beds and we actually haven't got enough hotel accommodation. And actually the local MP has set up a task group of which he's asked me to be part of in order to try and see if we can attract hotel operators into Bexhill. So I think the market at the moment is not quite right. And unlike lots of markets where you can, grow more apples if you've got a demand for apples, it's very hard to sort of respond to these sort of short-term changes in holiday preferences. So really welcome the report, excellent work, really in-depth, and thank you to the councillors in Rye and your Southern Rother, I think, Eastern Rother, sorry, for bringing this forward. It's been it's been excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGurk, you wanted to come back?
Sorry, yeah, just to mention quickly Councillor Cook, you were mentioning developing a strategy for battle and with businesses as well. And one of the things which I think was really useful during the Task and Finish group was how engaged the Chamber of Commerce were in Rye. They did their own research for this as well, and they're still keen to be engaged in anything going forward. They've got their, working on their business improvement district at the moment, which if it goes through would actually offer an opportunity to have a tourist levy locally. So I understand there may be some resources around that. So that they were a key partner, and I'm sure will continue to be a key partner for Rye and the area in anything moving forward. And they potentially they represent obviously the hospitality industry as well, and we don't want to denigrate anything to do with short-term lets or holiday lets. We want to support a mixed economy in terms of tourism and hospitality, but it's about equality and contributing to the local community as well, and opportunities to contribute and know what we've got and who's doing what when and how. So yeah, just to big up the Chamber of Commerce for Rye.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Cook in a minute. I'm just going to say, sort of from my point of view, I think this is I think Una touched on it as well. This is a moving beast, if you like. We've sort of seen across Europe, Barcelona and Madrid and I think the Balearic Islands, where sort of residents are kicking off and not happy. Various mayors have sort of changing rules. I think there's 6,000 in Barcelona alone, 6,000 or 60,000. I don't know. The figures are bonkers, the amounts of places that they're sort of shutting down, if you like. And that could be sort of seen as Councillor Bayliss said, that, you know, this massive increase we see in 2020, sort of straight after COVID. The world and his uncle wanted to go on holiday. They had money being given to them by the government. They couldn't spend it. And they couldn't go abroad. And I read somewhere that any one time during those 2 years, there was an extra 4 million people in the country who weren't abroad on holiday. So if you've got those extra people in the country, they all want somewhere to stay. And boy, oh boy, did they try and find somewhere to stay. People were letting out garden sheds. You know, they're putting up a tent in the back garden and charging £600 a week for it. And probably getting away with it. So now, you know, a few years on, people can now get on their plane and drive their car and go abroad. So the market has probably found its own level again, you know, which could be challenging for some people. The change in council tax, you know, we haven't really seen it. It only happened 4 or 5 weeks ago. So, you know, that's not fed in yet. You know, a mile, literally, just less than a mile from my house, there's a chap setting up a new business with shepherd huts. So he's got 6 or 7 shepherd huts, which he's building into lets. And I know the house sort of 500 yards away from me, that's a second home holiday let. I know they left last night because the alarm went off at 11:15 for an hour. So, yeah. Might be better off if someone actually lived in it better full time. It wouldn't keep waking me up with the alarm going off when people leave. But there it is. I think it's a changing sort of beast. So it's going to be difficult to sort of, whether we satisfy everybody who's responded to our questions and whether we satisfy those online, you know, on the Facebook pages and everything else who say about the holiday loans and the second homes, whether that satisfies it, but we're not going to know for another 12 months until things kick in. Councillor Cook?
And I'm coming in perfectly there because that was exactly what I was going to suggest. I think we owe it to these 454 people, I think that was right, who did respond to actually not just let this settle now. I think we need to review it. You know, especially once UNA's got hold of some of the data, I think we need to renew it in 9 to 12 months' time. And I think that would be quite a good thing to be able to publicise, that having created this, we will then review it.
So what I'll do, the recommendation is, there's a number of them, but I will read them out just in case anybody's online and listening. One, the findings of the task and finish group is summarised below. 2, the findings of the tourism accommodation study when complete and determine whether revisions are required to the emerging local plan, so that covers off the planning side of it. 3, that the council ring fences fund raised from the council tax premium for those local areas affected, ensuring that the parish and town in itself benefits from receipts raised in their respective areas. So that should satisfy people with Wright or Canberra. If you've got extra money coming in, then use that, and that can go to services, public conveniences, whatever else, keep them open and keep them in good order that tourists want to use. Further research be undertaken when feedback is received on numbers from Revenue and Benefits Manager on the effect of the council tax premium on numbers of second homes and new income received. So whether we have a flux of people putting their places up for sale or more money coming in, but we'll know that in a few months' time, so that covers off Councillor Cook's point. Engaging with the Department of Culture, Media, Sports concerning new electronic registration scheme when available for local authorities to try at the earliest opportunity. I think that covers off some of the comments we had from providers, wasn't it, who said, you know, we want to register properly, we want to do this, we want to be seen to be acting correctly. So that covers that off. Council researches potential for a tourist levy informed by data collected from the new electronic registration scheme, and again that's with the funding that RI have received, there's a potential in there for a tourist levy, so that could pay again for public realm conveniences, anything else. B7, the council work with the local hospitality industry to research ways of encouraging tourists to stay longer than 1 or 2 nights. So we can do that. Sounds sensible. Item 8, supporting local businesses and communities by provision of a dedicated web page for information and advice on their requirements for short-term holiday owners, and to provide channels for residents to report concerns, which would be sensible again. There's been problems in Brighton, I think, where you get these so-called party houses. Some poor person lives next door to a party house which gets a hen party in every Saturday night, which probably winds them up intently when they want to sit down and have a quiet glass of wine, and you've got 15 girls in there prancing around like mad, but I don't know, I've never been on one myself. Encouraging the council to look at all means to prioritise housing for local people, including those presented by a new bill, make its way through Parliament, prioritising local need, and be resolved. All those in participating in this project are thanked, and collected information is shared appropriately. And having completed this work, the Airbnb Task and Finish Group is disbanded. Happy with that recommendation, Councillor? You want to move it then? Good. Seconded. I can second that because I was on it. All those in favour? That's carried. Yeah, that's carried unanimously, even though Councillor Burns unsure. Una, I will say thank you for the work, and can you thank the other members of your team for the work they put into it, and we'll get an update at the end of this year and see what's what. Excellent. Thank you very much. Now then, where are we now? Performance report, item 7. Performance report, 4th quarter. Anna.
Thank you very much. So this is the performance report for the final quarter of the year. You will see from the report that we're actually doing very well across the board, and there's only 5 or 6 areas that we're performing either significantly above or below target. Please stop me at any point and ask any questions, and I've got colleagues in the room and online to support me with any difficult questions. The first one, where performance is below target, is freedom of information requests answered in 20 days. The target is to answer 100% in 20 days, and for the 4th quarter, the performance level is 90.9%. You will see, though, that this is heading in the right direction. It's previously been lower than that, and from the report, you'll see that 99.4% of requests were completed with 25 days with the use of an extension. Mark is online, but I'm happy to report that we've got some extra resilience in this area, and we have an FOI specialist working with us for 6 months to improve our performance and help us with best practice. I don't know if anybody has got any questions or if you would like Mark to add anything. No, I'll carry on. The next one is customer services, the channel shift from online to online from traditional methods. The target is 65%, and you'll see that for quarter 4 performance, the digital contact is 53.79%. It isn't where we would like it to be, but the general feeling is that because we still offer all methods of contact, which includes the traditional method of phoning up or writing in, it is quite difficult to influence that change in behaviour. Yeah. Any comments or questions on that?
With regard to the online, sometimes it is quite difficult if you go on and you ask Amy, and Amy doesn't answer the questions, or the way Amy answers the questions adds more questions, and sometimes the questions you ask aren't there, so Amy can't answer them, and that can be incredibly frustrating. It really can. I mean, it says 53.79%, but are we actually getting less inquiries? Is that why it's dropped more?
yes, we are getting less inquiries, so we have less contact. I think that in itself is probably a good thing. But Mark, is there anything that you want to add about Amy? And I know Amy is quite intuitive, isn't it? And it kind of improves as it goes on.
Thanks, Anna. Good evening, everyone. Yes, so Amy is very intuitive. So Amy's our chatbot. So it uses natural language processing. So it gets information from our website. And it also draws in information, from the equivalent of, the likes of ChatGPT, but it's Microsoft's own version. So, it's pulling in, as much information as we've given it to try and help customers out. The only missing connection it doesn't have is a connection with a person, which would aid that frustration. But, it has built in safeguards. So if someone does want to contact us, it will provide, the customer with our contact information to try and assist, if there is that frustration. So, this is effective as we can get it in its current form at present. But I can take away that feedback, Councillor Cook, thank you, and see what we can do, just to see if there's any, like I say, improvements that we can make. But going back to Anna's point in terms of that channel shift, it is difficult to transition people to online when we offer the whole range of traditional contact methods. And it is very much a balance between making not everyone is online as well. So like I say, it's trying to be cover every angle really to try and pick up every customer, which is very, very difficult. But it, there may be some decisions where we may have to trim down the availability of what channels are available depending on what contact people are contacting us about. Thank you.
Charlie, you got something to add?
Yeah, a lot of people do struggle online, but before I forget, I've just got to say how incredible the customer service team are at the main entrance of the town hall. Every time I come in there's always a queue. They're dealing with numerous inquiries. And in last week, I've picked up 3 issues with them that have been brought up to me by residents: fly tipping, refuge collection, and I've got a reply the same day saying, yes, this is on private land, or this is something we'll have to deal with. They've got a wonderful communication with departments that works extremely well, and they work. It doesn't matter which tour are on; they're all equally competent. They're absolutely brilliant. And unfortunately, that's why people come in and ask, because they know that's the best way they're going to get an answer. The other thing I wanted to bring up, we were very pleased about dealing with new housing applications. I remember just over a year ago, I helped a family apply, and it was up to 50 days to get a new application process. That has improved immensely. So I'm very encouraged by that. Thank you very much.
Questions on what we've got covered so far, or was it something else? Councillor Burton first.
Nearly. In that Anna mentioned about helping people to make the transition, and it hadn't reached with the percentage that they would like. And I was going to ask, and Marcus started to mention what suggestions they've got to help people make the transition. He started to answer that, but I wondered if there were any other ideas that the department had.
I'll let Mark do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Happy to answer this question. So, looking at a range of options to help assist customers, we work closely with our partners, so organisations like Citizens Advice, to try and do a bit more of a wraparound support for customers, but also help them, with form filling, looking at enabling them to be digital. So looking at, how we can source some devices, how we can, provide some training. So that this is, this isn't Robert doing it. This is, Citizens Advice working with companies like Tech Resort, things like that, to try and bridge that gap between, that digital inclusion side. So we're working on, a digital inclusion policy later down the line, which hopefully will kind of conjoin how Rover fits into that as well. See how we can, like I say, tap into where we can support customers who have barriers to get online. In terms of improving our digital offering, we're trying to explore different versions of how AI can assist customers. So, recently we put this in our contact us form. So when someone does come to contact us online, they put the reason why they want to contact us, and the form automatically gives a suggestion of what the answer would be. So it tries to answer their query, to keep that customer online, to signpost them where they can get more information, but it still gives that customer the option. If it doesn't answer their query, or they want to pursue it further, then they can contact a human. It still gives them that option. So, like I say, it's trying to enable people to do more online in a way it's a lot more straightforward. It can be quite confusing of what services are available, what does someone do in a certain situation. A bit like some of the findings of the Task and Finish group, where people's second homes, or short-term lets, what do they do with things? How do they find that information? So, like I say, it's just trying to give customers a bit more information, at their fingertips, but also supporting those that have barriers. But like I say, happy to answer any more questions.
You happy with that, Councillor?
It's complex, isn't it, and many different angles, but I think, he's ploughing away really at making that transition in all different ways, which is really good to hear.
Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we're sitting together, and it was going to be the same question actually, but of what character Mark could offer to help people. But there is quite a slide from 59% down to 53%, and I just wondered whether that percentage is reflected or reflects a reduction in the absolute number of people using online to give that percentage.
Yeah, or would that be a reduction in the amount of contact we're having in general? So has sort of face-to-face contact dropped off, as telephone dropped off? Are we doing such a good job that people don't need to contact us?
I think it's a few things actually, and the other thing is actually our call wait times are very good. So sometimes people choose a digital offer because they're hanging on for a long time on the phone, or they're not getting their email answered. As you mentioned, that service has been quite good. So sometimes if you can get through quite quickly on the phone, you're not going to choose the online offer. So it is quite a complex area, really.
You could have just said we're doing such a good job, people haven't contacted us in the first place, but there you go.
Thank you.
Carry on, Anna.
So moving on, and please stop me with any questions. The income from all assets under estates, we're in deficit again by £156,000, but this is because of two large lessees. I can never say that word properly. But because they are two of our largest lessees, that has quite an impact on the amount of income that we're collecting. Any questions on that one?
Do you have anything to add on that one, Andrew? As it might be of a concern, just to explain the position?
It's a consequence of getting into commercial markets. And also at least one of these is a national concern, not a million miles away. And they have better lawyers and negotiators than councils tend to have. So when you go into commercial property, you need to be fully aware of what you're doing, really. But that particular property is still generating a healthy profit.
just not quite as much as it was before.
I think that's probably what people want to hear at the end of it. It still washes its face. So we're cool with that. Anna.
Right, there's just a couple more areas. So the next one is housing. The average number of weeks a household was in temporary accommodation before placement, and the target is 15 weeks. You'll see from the report that, that for the final quarter, it's 39.39 weeks. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So this measure is taken when people leave temporary accommodation. So if it's been difficult to place a family, then of course the number of weeks is longer. And what this does show you is how difficult it is to place larger families who require a 3 or 4 bedroom home, and reflects the shortage of those homes that we've got in the district. Are there any questions about that one?
Do you want to come in there, Joe, and you sort of explain to me in the briefing? I think Anna's almost got that. So that sort of anomaly that's there with the numbers and the there's a very few who skew the number up, if you like. Is that right? I'll let you explain.
Yeah, no, I think Anna did a good job at trying to explain it. It's a bit of a complex measure in that what we measure is the people that have left accommodation, moved on from temporary accommodation in that quarter. What was the average? So it's not a mean average of everyone in TA and how long they've been waiting, because that is very vulnerable to a slew of new people coming in with very low average waiting times, skewing the figure. So it's not a perfect measure. It's supposed to be an indication, but it is vulnerable to the reverse of what I've just said, which is that when you've had people, larger households who've been waiting for a long time, exiting in one quarter, you get a very inflated average wait time because of, as Anna says, you have had larger households. Just coincidentally, we had a number of 3 and 4 beds come up all at once, and people who've been waiting for 18 months, 2 years, all came out at the same time, and then it bumps up to 39 weeks. So it's meant to give it's one of those measures that's it's a good indicator over a longer time period to just give you a bit of an idea of the ebb and flow. But it's not to step over the fact that it's a lot longer than we would like it to be, and we are making every effort to try and find new homes for people, to keep people in their existing homes where we can, and to make timely decisions. That has been challenging because of some challenges with HR back at Christmas time. We have had a bit of a falling back on a bit of an overdue decisions, which we are resourcing to clear the backlog. And we're close to clearing that backlog now, to reassure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barnes, you had a hand up first, I think.
Yes, it troubles me. We have a performance measure that doesn't accurately measure performance. I don't know what we can do about it, but it seems to me that if this average is going to, I mean, maybe we need to look at the trend line rather than the actual figure or something like that, because if this is going to bounce around quarter by quarter because of almost our success in this instance, I take it, in finding people long-term accommodation, or because there's suddenly a surge of homelessness, the figure actually doesn't measure this. It actually shows apparently more success, but in fact would show failure. So it seems to me we've got to hunt around to find a better, more robust measure of the way things are going. And maybe we could look at trend lines or something like that. But I would ask Joe to think whether there isn't a better way of measuring this, because this is clearly not really man enough for the job.
Joe, you...
I just wanted to highlight that when this measure was proposed, I did make this point that I didn't think it was a very good measure, and that the measures to focus on is homelessness prevention, which we do have control over, and developed a new measure which is novel to this council. I'm not aware of anyone else using it, and I have shared it with other councils who have begun to use it, is the average unit cost of temporary accommodation, which we can control through the acquisition of TA to demonstrate the benefits of that. So those seem fairer measures. It's much more of an indicator and is imperfect. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a really challenging one because I think it's a useful tool, a measure to try and achieve, to give you an indication of how long people in temporary accommodation. But unfortunately, it's a long time. The word temporary is becoming less and less relevant to describe the accommodation. And we are making, it's part of our East Sussex strategy, a slow move to referring to this as supported accommodation, really, which would be a better descriptor.
The kind of measure we want, but I'm not quite sure how we achieve it, is when somebody goes into homeless accommodation, how many weeks can they expect to be there? That's really the figure we're after. Quite how one would measure that, I leave to statisticians. And maybe somebody can think hard about it, because we're not getting it quite right at the moment. And similarly with the income one, which, again, if you have to caveat it in the way that we are caveating it, it's not obviously an entirely satisfactory measure. So, although it's moderately satisfactory as it stands, I think we should be hunting to see if there is a way of giving us the information that really Joe needs and we need to understand what is actually going on in this field. Because it will lead to quite important policy decisions. I personally think given the high level still of homelessness, we need further additions to our stock. But that will eventually, of course, lead us to actually perhaps have to restart the housing revenue account. And that has major implications for the district. So there are quite important issues here at stake.
Do you want to come back?
Just to thank you, John, and Councillor Barnes, excuse me, and we will look to take, not for the first time, you've put quite your finger on the issue, and I think you've also suggested something that has clicked in my mind. I'm reluctant to say too much now, but you put it quite well, and I think we can looking at something that will capture better for how long people can expect to wait when they enter. Temporary accommodation could be a useful way of looking at it. So I'll come back to you with that.
Thank you. Simon, Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, similar point, but, the performance, like, it's sort of, this sort of blunt tool in terms of performance, there's all the narrative behind that. This is why it's so important to understand the narrative behind that performance, because actually, if we're looking at single person, two-person households, I bet the wait time would be far less. And as you're saying, that figure is boosted by three or four bed houses, which is being released and found for people, which is, so that's a really good news story. I know Hastings have had huge problems as well, placing, every local authority has problems placing larger households. So maybe if it was broken down into one and two person, whatever it is, whatever it's your job. You will know the best way to portray that performance realistically, because actually, even at that number, there are plenty of local authorities who would be jealous of that performance. I think that it actually, even when the performance is pressured, according to our scorecard, it's actually still telling a good news story for us locally. So, I mean, I'm not trying to minimise or denigrate the experience for those people who have been waiting for a long period of time. And I understand, I've worked in temporary housing in the past and how pressured that can be, particularly when we're supporting people with multiple complex needs, and how dynamic that situation is. But I know from casework, I'm sure plenty of councillors here and online and will appreciate the work that housing do here, and how responsive, you know, your department are when there is a query. So, you know, even though it's a relatively high number for Rother, it's still telling quite a good story, in my view.
Thank you. Mark, a quick one.
Thank you. This isn't about this point. It's just going back to the income from rents. There seems to be a figure of £267,000, 475, and that shoots up to 2 million and something. And I might have put my head above the parapet, but is that?
Let me have a closer look. It's very small writing, isn't it? So. Can I come back to that one? I'll do the last bit and then come back to it, if that's okay. Yeah?
Yep.
So while I get my glasses, the final one that I was going to mention is about very good performance, and this is waste collections, missed bins per 100,000 with a target of 62. And again, for this quarter, there's excellent performance with only 8.5 recorded missed bin collections for quarter 4. So I'm pleased to have my colleague responsible for this area beside me. And actually, it's all connected, isn't it? Because this is probably another reason why not so many people are contacting us or calling. And on that note, I will just get my glasses and have a look at that question you asked.
I think Joe might have an answer.
Well, Andrew, I won't take his credit.
We think it's a typo in the report. Yeah.
That was an easy answer.
Apologies for the typo.
Can I now? I'm going to the fly tips. I've reported fly tips before, and literally they're gone in 24 hours. You know, I go to a parish council meeting and you drive up the road. Oh, so photo, take it, drive it, and next day it's gone. It's gone. You know, and you think, well, it's brilliant. It really is good. The missed bins, again, you know, 8.5. You know, I can remember when it used to, you know, we used to have 90, and you say, well, that was good. You know, 100,000 bins we collect and not missed 90. Now we're missing less than 9. You know, but on a contact, if you go back to page 84, we've got a pie chart, and the amount of the contact breakdown shows waste and recycling is a 27% of the contact to the help point, I'm assuming. So I'm assuming, is that questions about brown bins and you know, can I have a new bin, or the wheels falling off the bin, or whatever? It can't be about missed bins, because we ain't missing any.
Yes, Councillor, it doesn't make sense, does it? Well, garden waste would account for a lot of that. People calling in, people requesting new containers, things like that, would account for that sort of level of contact. But, and there are some missed bins that are disputed. So the actual bins that are not collected might be higher than what's showing here, because somebody might not have put the bin out at the right time, or it might have been put out and contaminated, so it wasn't missed, it was contaminated. So there's a variety of reasons why people might call in about their bin, but it wouldn't be classed as a missed bin. I hope that helps.
Okie dokie, thank you. Can you pass our thanks on to the guys at Biffa who are doing a good job, basically? I know they're doing what they're paid to do, but yeah, I ride my bike around a lot of Kent, and I'm always reporting dumped fridges in ditches and all the rest of it in the middle of nowhere. And I go back 4 weeks later and there's still a dumped fridge in the middle of nowhere, exactly the same place it was 4 weeks previous. But that doesn't happen in Rother. If I ride around and I find a dumped fridge and bring it in, it's gone. Sometimes it's gone before I get home. So, yeah, I think it's worth a mention Councillor Cook.
Yeah, I'd like to add my thanks also to BIFA. In twice a year, Battletown Council organises a litter pick, and we give out blue bags to people outside school and tell them to bring it to the recreation ground. And on average, we collect over 30 blue sacks of rubbish. And BIFA turn up at 1 o'clock or 1:30 and collect it and take it all away. Yeah. And they are amazing.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I'm back on housing with Joe. I think he will agree with me how important the intervention team is on housing to prevent housing homelessness in the first place. I know they're very proactive with that because if you can stabilise their tenancy or something, prevent that homelessness, that's crucial. And secondly, we all know, we've been through it, that there's never been a lot of 4-bed accommodation. I've got residents in my ward who've been on the list for a long, long time. I think nowadays families are getting smaller, so it's not such an issue so much now. But I can remember the days of Mr. Bolton, where I went to visit his apartment one day, someone turned up with 6 children just been made homeless from bail. So, you know, it's always going to be that issue sometimes. And the final comment I made, I agree with Joe. We bought 71 properties, which are all of a good standard, and many of them are 3-bed. So when we put somebody in this temporary accommodation, they are adequately housed for that period of time. So it's not the same as where the start point again, which might be a pooling bedsit or something. So actually, moving people around, I'm not that distressed about, because once we've got them into decent accommodation, you know, they're in a better circumstance than they were, and they probably will settle quite well, and probably would like to stay there permanently, you know. So it isn't really temporary, is it? If you put them into a decent accommodation, you know.
Thank you. Anna, you nearly done, or have you just got the planning bit?
No, I think I'm done.
You think you're done?
Yeah.
Excellent. So what have we got here? Recommendation resolved that this committee consider these findings and recommend any actions to Cabinet as necessary. I think we've mentioned, Joe's going to look at, and he's got a little brainwave, the housing one. And I think that was probably it. Councillor Burton?
Chair, I wanted to go back to the first of the Scope 1 and 2 emissions reduction, which hasn't been mentioned. And a couple of comments. Is that okay to talk about that one? It's the very first, Appendix A. First.
Page 81.
Yes, page 81 on Anna's report.
Climate strategy. Yeah. Any word on that one, Anna? I'll pass it to you.
So that one we only measure once a year. So the information that you've got here is the same information that we've been publishing, and it won't change until we've got the figures, which I think we're due to get the figures this month. So it will probably be a couple of months before we publish the new data.
Okay. Just a quick comment, because, well, first of all, as we said, we've already seen that as a fantastic improvement in our actual tonnes of carbon emission. We're going down from 202 to 17, which is a really good result. And I presume it's going to gradually improve things like the temporary accommodation, that they would then be included. And my final thing is a bit like the comment on the longevity of this key performance indicator of going down 50%. And I have raised it previous over-scrutiny meetings that I think we need to go back and look at what the targets are in relation to climate strategy. But I don't know how all that happens, but I want to highlight that because we're going down and down, and we might not get much further. Thank you for your patience on that one.
Okie dokie, thank you. Well, there it is. The recommendation is that this committee consider these findings, which we've done, and recommend any action to Cabinet as necessary, which I think we've probably made a few points that have been picked up by officers. Yep, we can pass those on. So someone want to move the recommendation? Councillor Cook?
Yes.
Excellent.
Happy to
Thank
move.
you. And a seconder? Councillor Barnes, thank you very much. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. Item 8, purpose of the report. Members to give consideration to council priorities when setting overview and scrutiny work programme for the year. Resolve that this committee set its work programme for the new council year, determine which subcommittees, task and finish groups it wishes to appoint, reappoint. Laura.
I think you've said it really, Chair. So we had a meeting of the corporate management team and overview and scrutiny committee. I think it was back on the 20th of May to determine the programme for the year. I think that is set out in Appendix 1. In red, you can see the additions that came out of that meeting. I think that's right, yeah. So some of those additions included a little bit more involvement in the budget setting process, and particularly the proposals for savings that are coming forward. Like last year, we are having a budget challenge session, which is basically a process where each head of service comes to a panel, which is myself and Andrew and Councillor Girwan and the leader. And the purpose of that panel is to look at some of the savings proposals coming forward. Now, that was the first year we did it last year, and we didn't start that process until about September. But this year, we'll be starting that in July. So there'll be an opportunity for those proposals to come to scrutiny. So we thought that was something that not quite sure how that will work yet, but definitely overview and scrutiny need a role in that process going forward. So that's one change. And then the other really strong theme that came out of that meeting was member oversight of local government reorganisation and devolution and how that was going to work. On the work programme, we've sort of flagged that there's a key decision in September time when the final submission goes back to government, and it will be important to try and timetable that in. So that was, I think they were the two main things that really came out for the programme, as well as feedback from organisations awarded council grants. We also felt that was something that would be useful to come to Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So that's the programme side of it. And then I think there's the look at what subcommittees and task and finish groups we have for the forthcoming year. And they are set out in the report somewhere on page, I think, 92 onwards. I think some of them may have been disbanded this evening, actually. But we've still got the local enforcement plan task and finish group, which I don't think has met for some time. Is that right, Lisa?
Once.
It's only met once. So that's something that I think we probably do need to pick up. And the Airbnb task and finish group, I think, although the role of the task and finish group is done, I think we're hearing that Una will bring back a report maybe rather than continue with the task and finish group. Crime and Disorder Committee that we always have, and I think they are, I think I've missed one out, the Housing Strategy one, which again has done its job, I think. So it's really what other task and finish groups we want going forward. I said it in the programme meeting, and I'll say it again, we are, because of LGR, we are incredibly stretched at the moment. So I think we do need to, from an officer point of view and a member point of view, actually it's taking a lot of time. So I think it is quite important that we only set things up that we know we can do well. And I think we've had two examples actually this evening in the housing strategy task and finish group and the Airbnb one, where we've really done those well. And I think it really, really shows when we resource things properly and we have a really engaged lead officer who's been supported. So I think, let's think really carefully about that. But yes, so over to the committee to decide the programme for the year.
Thank you. I think I may be off grid, but the local government reorganisation could well be a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of work for someone. you know, and you know, maybe a group would be set up to you know, you've got a group that you're looking at. Would you need a group of councillors to sort of scrutinise that? I don't know.
One thing I have proposed is a kind of reference group, a cross-party reference group, that would have representation from across all groups. And really the purpose of that is we have so much control over it, but we're not controlling the whole process. So to scrutinise things and want a lot of change out of those processes is probably not where we're at. It's about informing and influencing, I think. So that's what I've kind of proposed on an informal basis going forward. So it's not part of scrutiny, it's that kind of shaping and working together to make sure that Rother's interests are well served in what comes forward. So that is something that we've only recently agreed, and we'll meet on a monthly basis, I think. So there's that kind of informal grouping, and I think it's making sure that any key decisions that come forward also, you know, go through the scrutiny process. It's you know, it's about communication, it's about being kept informed, and it's about making sure that any concerns that you have are fed back into that process. But I think there will be an opportunity, particularly on the engagement side, and by engagement I mean not going out and consulting people, but rather what local decision making might be set up in the new authority and what that might look like. It's issues like that we're sort of really well placed to inform. So I think it's picking the right things that we know can shape and inform, and finding, you know, an appropriate process to bring them forward. So yes on the informal side, and yes on those key decisions. I can't say exactly what that looks like there, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, you'll see on page 101 the sort of the proposed sort of Appendix 1 made items in bold. So July we'll be looking at draft revenue budget, capital programme outturn, new homeless and rough sleeping strategy, consultation results. Then going on from there, performance report, first quarter, state of the district report, council plan update, and then a new one, review of budget saving. Then there's a sort of to be confirmed a meeting about local government reorganisation. I think there's going to be member briefings as well. So there's going to be stuff going on. What I'm thinking of is somewhere along the line, we promised Lisa that we'd do 2 meetings online to help her budget, which probably looks like at the moment I'm looking probably April the 27th. It's just called in urgency and my annual report to council. And maybe there's one of the others that might not be so. Well, I won't say they're all important, but not as important as needing us all here. Any thoughts, Councillor Cook?
I would suggest perhaps the Delaware Pavilion Trust performance update would be a good one we could have online.
Yep. Councillor Barnes, John?
Sorry, this isn't on the which one should be online. I agree with Councillor Cook about that. I'm looking at the items for consideration, which it worries me that tourism strategy, we've never evaluated its success or otherwise. I think with the tourism market shifting so much, I think we should either consider that now or bury it. The health and well-being is quite important, and maybe we should look at that when we consider the State of the District report in September. Obviously, this is a fallow year for reviewing the task and finish groups consideration. That won't come up until next year. But I think we should look at the annual report from the Health and Wellbeing Board in September. I think we've got to consider how we're going to look at the Rother District Council housing company performance. In some ways, I think it probably ought to be a joint group between this committee and audit, and it might well be a smaller group is better placed to go into that and report back to the two parent committees. Just a few thoughts. I'm not going to move anything tonight, but throw those out for the Chief Executive to consider. Lorna.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just pick up on the housing company. We have a audit report that will be published at the end of this week, and one of the recommendations from a report which comes every year on the Housing Company to Audit Committee, one of the recommendations that's been made by our Deputy Monitoring Officer is that actually we change the way we do the shareholder representative group, which at the moment is an officer-based meeting, and the proposal is, and what she sees as best practice, is to have that as a subcommittee of executive. So because it becomes a subcommittee of executive, if that recommendation is taken forward, then that oversight of overview and scrutiny kind of gets built into that process. And we know we have the governance arrangements being, has oversight through the audit committee. So I think if that change is made, it's a lot clearer going forward what the respective roles are. But it's just a recommendation at this stage, and we'll have to see how that comes forward.
Okay.
Oh, apparently it's been published already. Apologies, of course it has. Yeah.
Right, okay. Well, we've got food for thought there, so I think what we'd go, the next meeting, we'll come over here and have it. Shall we? We've got the homelessness and rough sleeping strategy consultation results, and the draft revenue budget capital programme outturn. Is that, you happy with that? Yeah. Do you want to do it online? Could that be done online? What do you think, Lisa? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah? All right. 7/7 then. 7 for the 7th, we'll be online. There you go. Happy with that, Lisa? Is that all right?
It may depend what's in the reports and whether you've got to make any recommendations to Cabinet or not. So it could be a tricky one.
Can I come in on that?
Potentially.
Given that we've got the council plan coming to that meeting, and we are going to have to make some changes to the council plan, given that we've got 2 and a bit years left. I'm looking at that meeting. Oh, am I looking at the wrong one? Where am I looking?
Oh, we're on this one.
Sorry, I thought we mentioned September being online.
No, 7/7.
Oh, I do apologise.
Well, the homeless consultation is being recommended to council, to Cabinet. Yeah.
Right, so there we go.
Unfortunately so.
Change plan, we'll be over here.
October?
Well,
what Councillor Cook recommended?
Yeah, well that's right. Yeah, well I'm just trying, I don't know about October, I just want to know the next one. Right, so the next meeting, we'll be over here. 7th of the 7th. It's July, isn't it? Yeah, all right. It's been a long night. Right.
Thanks,
Yeah, there's only a quarter, right? Yeah. At 6 o'clock, yeah. Okay, well, with that, I can thank you for your attendance. Thank you to members online, Cabinet members, and anybody else, and Richard Barber Hardy, who's making sure he's probably sitting downstairs waiting for a lift home, I bet. And I declare the meeting closed at 7:45. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thanks.